We often talk about how political conflicts end with these imperfect peace deals. They're designed to stop the fighting, sure, but they often don't fix what was broken in the first place. Well, today we're looking at something different. A document from a key group in South Sudan that didn't just critique the official peace deal, the R-ARCSS 2018, they threw it out completely, called it broken, and demanded, well, a revolution.
That's right. We're digging into the white paper from the Equatoria People's Alliance, the EPA. And this thing it's more than a critique. It's a blueprint for a new country. It gives us incredibly stark diagnosis of state failure and then presents these two maximalist demands.
Okay, what are they?
It's either a people's shared sovereignty union built on regional power, or if that doesn't work, full independence for their region, the Equatoria Federal Democratic Republic.
So our mission today is really to get you inside this way of thinking. We want to understand not just what the EPA is asking for, but why. What do they see as the absolute root of the conflict? And what are these incredibly specific and frankly provocative changes they're demanding?
Yeah, let's start with their core diagnosis. Why, in their view, is the current state just a complete failure?
Exactly.
Well, they see that peace agreement, the R-ARCSS, and the government that came out of it, the R-TGONU, as just fatally compromised from the start.
How so?
The language they use is fascinating. They call it an elite-centric power-sharing agreement. The whole point, they argue, was just to recycle the same leaders who started the war in the first place, not to bring any real change.
So elite-centric means it wasn't about peace, it was about divvying up the spoils of the state again.
Precisely. For them, it excluded huge parts of the population, especially the people of Equatoria. It just couldn't address the root causes of the war because it kept the people responsible for the war in power.
And they don't hold back in their assessment of the leadership, do they?
Oh, not at all. The white paper claims that since 2011, South Sudan has been under constant tyranny and kleptocratic rule. And this has led to a situation where the country has, and this is a direct quote, morphed into becoming a country without a state, nor functional organs of viable and sustainable governance.
Let's just pause on that phrase for a second. A country without a state. I mean, that's not just saying the government is bad, that's saying the entire structure has collapsed.
It is. They're arguing the whole state apparatus, the treasury, the courts, all of it, has been hijacked. It's not there to govern, it's there to enable theft by a small political and military class.
And if that's the main function, then I guess nothing else can actually work.
Right. All the normal functions of a state just cease to exist in any real way. And this leads to their big legal argument. They claim the government's official term expired 36 months in on September 12, 2021.
So in their view, the country is currently operating without any legitimate government or leadership at all.
Exactly. It creates this legal vacuum, which they say makes their alternative urgent.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because they don't just frame this as a tragedy for South Sudan. They frame it as a direct threat to everyone else.
They do. They raise this very dark, very urgent warning. The white paper says the collapsed state is being used as a launch pad by terrorists affiliated with Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Exaleka, Boko Haram, and other terrorist groups.
Wow.
Their fear is that this power vacuum created by the government's failure will be filled by these global terror groups, which could destabilize, the whole region of East and Central Africa.
So they're turning an internal governance debate into a high-stakes international security crisis. The argument is that a new democratic government isn't just good for South Sudan. It's necessary to prevent this slide into anarchy that could shelter terrorists.
Yeah, and they even cite examples like the former Yugoslavia, Somalia, Syria, places where an internal collapse became a global threat. The message is pretty clear. The choice is radical reform or a violent regional catastrophe.
Okay, so if that's the diagnosis, state failure, no legitimacy, and a rising terror risk, then the solution has to be just as radical. Let's get into their vision. This People's Shared Sovereignty Union. How do you even begin to rebuild a nation from that kind of collapse?
Well, you start by rejecting the entire model. They completely throw out the centralized system that runs out of Juba, the capital. The solution, they believe, has to be based on the three historically autonomous regions: Upper Nile, Equatoria, and Bahr al-Ghazal.
Going back to the three historic regions, that's a huge departure from the current system. That sounds like a return to a kind of federal structure. But they use this term shared sovereignty. What does that actually mean in practice during the transition?
It's designed to take power away from the current elites immediately. During this transitional period, sovereignty wouldn't be with the government cabinet in Juba. It would be directly vested in and shared by the people in those three regions.
How would that work? I mean, who represents the people?
That's the key. Representation would happen through what they call people's constitutional conventions, held in each region. The people there would choose their own representatives for the new government bodies. It completely bypasses the old political parties and warlords.
So it shifts the center of gravity from the capital to the regions. It's a way to build legitimacy from the ground up.
That's the idea.
But I have to ask, wouldn't dividing the country along these old lines, even if they're historically legitimate, just risk breaking it apart? Or creating three new conflicts instead of one?
That is the critical question, and they know it. That's why the endpoint of this whole transition is the right to self-determination. The goal isn't necessarily to split up, it's to prove that they can live together, but only under this new system of autonomy and accountability.
So the whole union is basically a trial period.
Exactly. At the end of the transition, the people in each of these autonomous regions get to vote. They can either vote to confirm the union and stay together under the new federal system, or
they can opt out.
They can opt out of the transitional union for independent existence as a sovereign state. It's a democratic off-ramp. The power to dissolve the union is with the people, not the elites fighting over the capital.
The document even has diagrams, right?
Yeah.
Showing how these regions could be broken down further into smaller executive councils.
Yeah.
It's a plan for, hyper decentralization.
Yes. It's all about solving the conflict over the center by making the center weaker and the regions sovereign.
But, political restructuring is one thing. What about justice? They can't just move forward without dealing with the past.
And that's maybe the most important part of this whole plan. They believe accountability is impossible under the current system, with the very people they accuse of crimes still in charge.
So let's dig into those justice demands. This is where it gets really pointed, right?
Absolutely. The white paper demands full accountability for war crimes, gross human rights violations, and, very specifically, for the massive economic crimes, the kleptocracy. This isn't just a vague call for justice, it's a demand for trials.
And when they talk about kleptocracy, they're not just talking about general corruption. They're targeting the entire system of theft.
Yes, very specifically. They demand the recovery of all looted and stolen financial resources. And they name names, or at least categories. Politicians, army generals, firms, foreign business partners, anyone who helped loot the country's coffers.
To do that, though, you'd need control of the security services, which are usually part of the problem. What's their plan for security sector reform?
It's a huge priority. They demand that the new security forces have to reflect the country's ethnic diversity, not just one group. And crucially, they demand to, quote, disband and reconstitute the infamous National Security Service, the NSS.
The NSS.
Yeah.
I mean, for anyone who follows South Sudan, that's known as the main tool of repression. Demanding its disbandment is a direct challenge to the state's power.
It's a profound challenge. They say anyone in the NSS who committed human rights violations or financial crimes has to be put on trial, and the new NSS would have a much smaller mandate, just intelligence gathering, and it would have to be accountable to Parliament, not just the president.
And then there's the most specific and I think the most provocative judicial demand in the whole document.
Yeah, it targets the very top. The document explicitly calls for the trial of Salva Kiir for the 2013 genocide and crimes against innocent Nuer civilians in Juba.
They allege these were massacres carried out through door-to-door ethnic cleansing.
Yes, by state security under the president's command. It is a direct, maximalist demand for judicial reckoning at a highest possible level.
I mean, is there any precedent for that? Demanding the trial of a sitting head of state as part of a peace proposal? It sounds like something designed to make any negotiation impossible.
And that is the analytical challenge here for you, the listener. It is absolutely a maximalist stance. Is it politically feasible? Probably not in a normal negotiation. But for the EPA, it draws a moral line in the sand.
The line being that there can be no real peace without uncompromising justice.
Right. They reject any deal that gives amnesty to people they accuse of the worst atrocities. For them, this demand is what gives any future government legitimacy.
It shows they believe you can't build a real peace on a foundation of impunity. Okay, so let's pivot to the broader democratic changes they want to see, things like basic freedoms and social stability.
Beyond the big constitutional stuff, their plan gets very specific about reversing the tools of dictatorship. They commit to all the basic human rights under the African and UN charters, of course.
But what really stands out is their plan for media and press freedom. A dictatorship needs to control the story, and they go right after that.
They really do. They demand the immediate lifting of the state of emergency, release of all political prisoners. But the media reforms are key. They want to enforce the right of access to information, for transparency.
And they go after the state-owned media directly.
Yes. And state control of TV and radio, and establish an independent media and communications authority that's accountable to Parliament, not the president. It's a deliberate effort to break the information monopoly that has kept the current regime in power.
And finally, what about the issues that drive conflict for ordinary people? Things like land and displacement.
They see that political greed fuels social division, so they demand immediate action on land grabbing and occupation across all the regions. And critically, they want to ensure the safe repatriation of all refugees and internally displaced people back to their original homes.
Because without resolving land conflicts, that whole regional autonomy model could just fall apart.
It's essential for building trust.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all this. The EPA is essentially challenging the entire foundation of the current South Sudanese state. They're saying it's illegal, it's broken, it's run by a kleptocracy, and they're calling for a total revolution, political, judicial, structural, based on regional power and extreme accountability.
And they see this radical path as the only real alternative to a complete state collapse and the terrifying prospect of South Sudan becoming a base for global terrorism. Their white paper isn't a compromise. It is a declaration that the system needs a total overhaul.
And as we wrap up, it's really important to note how they say they'll achieve this. They commit to using political means, alliances, and then, quote, all legitimate self-defense means feasible, and popular uprising of the masses to effect revolutionary change.
Which leaves you, the learner, with this lingering provocative question. Given how maximalist these demands are, especially trying the sitting president and giving regions the right to secede, can a vision this radical, this uncompromising, truly be achieved through politics and popular uprisings? Or does this roadmap, built on justice and autonomy, inevitably lead back to the very violence the country is so desperate to escape?